What's cracking, guys? Omar Yusuf here, back with another video, back with an all-new series for 2019. This is very important. You see, I want to stretch out, try new things. I've been thinking about this for quite some time. I want to use my influence, my channel, the reach, to try and highlight different things, useful information that you guys can use, as well as trying to chronicle different athletes along the way, their journeys, so they could serve as motivation and what you can learn from these individuals. I'm tentatively titling this the Train series. Well, I'll do an athlete profile in each one of these. I hope to make, I would say 2 a month at the most would be what I'd be able to do. This one, the very first one, is going to be on Stefanie Cohen. You guys might know her as an extremely strong lifter, one of the strongest powerlifters of all time, who's absolutely crushing numbers. Her Wilks is over 600, I think it's like 640, something insane like that. But also, what makes her tick? You know, what really motivates someone like that? What gets inside of them to try and achieve this greatness? And maybe once again, people can find inspiration. So I want to give a 3D look at some of these athletes from a variety of different disciplines. It's not only going to be powerlifting or weightlifting. So Steffi was here in Toronto this past week. I thought it'd be a great first person to kick off this series. If you enjoy this longer form content, I don't want to call it documentary style, but it's not quite an interview. That's why I'm calling it a profile, where you can learn a lot about lifting and about what motivates individuals. Make sure to like this video and let me know in the comment section below who you want to see next. Anyways, without further ado, let's get this first episode started.
I felt really lost, and not only that, but I got kicked out of grad school in my first year. The time that I ever maxed out my sumo deadlift, Hayden was the one that was showing me, oh, see, this is how you do it. You grab the bar here, you put your feet out here. And then I was like, oh, like this, and pulled 315. All throughout my life, I consider myself an outlier. Sometimes it's refreshing to know that even the people that you look up to the most have been through rough patches in their life and have been through periods where they haven't been okay, whether that's an injury, issues with their families, issues at school, or feeling lost, feeling that you don't belong. Obviously, that's something that I've gone through, that I know that everyone else does, but it just doesn't get enough attention, and it's not talked about a lot. What's going on? My name is Stefanie Cohen. I am a doctor of physical therapy and a professional powerlifter. I'm 26 years old. I started lifting weights about 6 years ago. Initially did a little bit of CrossFit for about a year, then did Olympic weightlifting for 3 years, and finally powerlifting for the last 3 years. Best competition squat is for 440 pounds. Down, 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 Best bench competition is 230 pounds. And best deadlifting competition is 518 pounds. So I come from a more traditional sports background, to say it some way. I initially started playing soccer back in Venezuela, where I played for the national Venezuelan team. And when I moved to the States, I stopped playing for various reasons. And I just kind of was always looking for a way to fill that void and find a different sport that I could be good at. So I tried a bunch of different sports. I did skateboarding for a little bit. I did boxing, kickboxing, triathlons, half marathons, a lot of different things. And eventually landed in CrossFit, which was kind of the first time that I ever got a taste for the barbell. And it was through CrossFit that I found a weightlifting coach that coincidentally used to train the national Venezuelan Olympic weightlifting team. And he was the one that kind of took me under his wing and saw the potential I had to become good at lifting weights. And so for 3 years, he coached me for free and taught me everything that I know about Olympic weightlifting. And eventually, so after 3 years, I started grad school, which was a pretty difficult period of my life because it was the first time ever where I was forced to put my athletic passion in sports in the back seat and was forced to focus on more academic and my professional life. And so I was having a really hard time balancing training, Olympic weightlifting, and being in grad school because the time commitment is so big. And so I met Hayden, my current fiance, and he was the one that came up with the idea. I was like, hey, you don't have time or energy to be dedicating 6 hours of your day to doing your 2-a-day Olympic weightlifting session. So why don't you just try to even narrow it down a little bit more, just focus on one thing, just focus on getting stronger. Do one session, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and just focus on getting your squat and your deadlift up, because that on its own is gonna make you better at Olympic weightlifting. And so that's how I got into powerlifting, and eventually got better and better to the point where it didn't make much sense for me to even go back to Olympic weightlifting. Not saying that I never will, but at this point in time at least, I've been focusing more on powerlifting because I see myself achieving bigger things in that sport, at least for now.
What was it about powerlifting we thought, like, this is the one for me?
So a couple of things. The first one was the first time that I ever maxed out my sumo deadlift. Hayden was the one that was showing me, see, this is how you do it. You grab the bar here, you put your feet out here. And then I was like, like this, and pulled 315, which was huge, especially at that time. I know that 315 doesn't seem like that much nowadays with hundreds of girls pulling over 400 and 500, but it was a big deal at that point. So that was kind of my first realization that I was like, maybe, I have a good build. My body proportions are the right ones for this sport, at least for this one movement of the sport. I had a pretty strong squat coming from Olympic weightlifting, so I wasn't too worried about that. And then the other thing that kind of led me to believe that I had what it took to become better at the sport was how fast I was progressing. So every time I stepped into a platform, I was able to put on to my total like 40, 50, 60 pounds every time I competed. So that was another hint.
You've accomplished a lot in powerlifting. What do you want out of the sport? Like, what do you hope to accomplish from this entire lifting journey that you're on?
So for the most part, now with bigger competitions coming up like the US Open, we are, or I am at least, I don't know, I can't speak for the rest of the people or the girls, but there's a lot more stress being placed on how you compare to everyone else in the world via Wilks or some other standardizing formula. And so obviously one of the goals that I have is to be the best powerlifter in the world by that standard. But for myself, in the end of the day, I think that's something that a lot of powerlifters can agree on, and that's that you're competing against yourself, and you have very specific goals that just are important for you for X reason. For me, I've always had, for a while, I have had my eyes set on a 700 Wilks and a 600-pound pull. So that is my ultimate goal in powerlifting.
You said something famously that then drew a lot of attention, where it was a quote from Mean Girls, but you said the limit does not exist. Can you talk a little bit just about the mentality when it comes to lifting and how you just approach trying to compete in general, where, of course, hard work, dedication goes into play, but I don't think people realize how much mental effort goes into it. Can you just talk a little bit about that whole, the limit does not exist? Yeah, absolutely. So all throughout my life, I consider myself an outlier. And throughout my life, I've constantly been dealing with doubt just from other people, from close friends and family, from professors, from coaches, from teammates. There's always people around me that have told me that I can't do something. And multiple times I've proven them wrong, that I can do those things. And so that's where that mentality comes from, the limit does not exist, and it's particularly, it's even more apparent in powerlifting, where you have all these world records being broken multiple times per year, and truly, you don't know what the limit is going to be. You see someone doing something ridiculous, and then a day later, a month later, a week, or a year later, you see people shattering that record. So you don't know what you can do until you actually do it. So keeping that in your head, that you're never done, that you can always do better, is something that always kind of motivates me to push myself
as hard as I can to achieve whatever it is that I want to achieve.
I think you've been very influential when it comes to that. Can you talk a little bit about competing in a sport that has been predominantly male for such a long time, like just what that's been like for you?
Yeah, it's been awesome to just be part of this amazing movement of putting more barbells into women's hands and promoting the idea that strength is beautiful, that you shouldn't really, that as a woman you shouldn't be really worried about what other people think about the way you look and what you should look like, but you should be proud of what your body can do instead of what it's doing for others. So, I mean, in the last at least 3 years, because that's how long I've been powerlifting for, the amount of women that have been getting into it and the amount of women competing at a high level and achieving amazing things in the sport has been just crazy, and it's been amazing to be a part of it. I mean, just look at the top 5 best Wilks right now. The all-time list is dominated by women. You know, it's awesome. It's awesome to be a part of it and to see it happen. Talking about the difficulties that I've gone through, at least in my journey, I think that's something that obviously I don't highlight in my Instagram. I don't talk about a lot, but some of the things that I've had to go through to get to where I am. Sometimes it's refreshing to know that even the people that you look up to the most have been through rough patches in their life and have been through periods where they haven't been okay, whether that's an injury, issues with their families, issues at school, or feeling lost, feeling that you don't belong. Obviously, that's something that I've gone through, that I know that everyone else does, but it just doesn't get enough attention, and it's not talked about a lot. So just not dismissing the fact that we all go through that. And I mean, I can give you a couple examples of times in my life that I've gone through that exemplify that. So going through grad school, for example, the period of time where I told you that I didn't know what sport to do, I felt really lost. And not only that, but I got kicked out of grad school in my first year because I was having a hard time balancing both things. And for me, there was the first time in my life where I truly had failed at something. I got kicked out of school. You know, that's crazy. It's crazy for me. And when I wrote the appeal and I sat down in a table with 15 of my professors, I was pretty much told that, 1, I wasn't as strong as a student as I thought I was, and 2, that I was going to need extensive counseling to get past the fact that I wasn't going to be an athlete anymore, and that I was going to have to quit all of my dreams and aspirations of becoming an athlete of any sort, and I was just going to have to focus 100% in school. And you know, that was rough. That was a really low time in my life, but I proved myself, not only to myself, but to all of those professors that had doubts in me that I couldn't do something, and I just pushed through, and I'm here now and doing better than ever. So don't dismiss the fact that wherever people are in their journey, they had to go through a lot of ups and downs to get to where they are. I think a lot of that mentality that I have in life stems from what I've learned through sports, through good sportsmanship, through understanding that one bad training session doesn't determine your future, that it's just one rough patch in the road. So to give you an example, in my own training, obviously you're seeing, like I said, in my Instagram, you're seeing the highlights of what I want you to see, how I want you to perceive me and my training. That's not it doesn't encompass the whole story.
That was an isometric hold, okay? 100% on purpose.
So when it comes to training, a lot of my mentality is, to me, the fact that I'm stepping into the gym and I'm trying my best, that to me is a win. So it's important not to get so soaked in and frustrated with one training session, one missed rep, or one PR that you failed. Instead, you should be, what I do is I look at the whole picture, and I don't let that one training session affect my perception of myself and what I think I can accomplish. There is a story about a golfer that would never admit that he missed a shot. So anytime that anyone would ask him, oh yeah, you know, how was that? Why do you think you missed that? He would be like, oh, I never missed. That never happened, I never missed. And that's kind of similar mentality to what I have. You know, you just kind of, you can get mad and angry for a few minutes or let your emotions take over for a little bit and then just pretend like it never happened. You never missed that rep. You never had a bad session. You never failed a lift, you know, and just kind of having that mentality, because I think there's a fine line in between not taking yourself seriously at all and just thinking that it's a game, and then taking it way too seriously. There's a really fine line that you have to find for yourself, whatever works best for you. But essentially, don't get too caught up on the minutia of training. Just always look at the big picture and forget about the bad training sessions that you have.
I talk a little technical now, just about your training methodology, like how you approach training.
Yeah.
Yeah, just training methodology. Like, what's your approach to the barbell and powerlifting?
As far as my personal approach to powerlifting, when it comes to writing a program, it really depends. I hate to say it depends, but a lot of things depend, both in the physical therapy world and in the strength and conditioning world. I think it's important to be able to dissect it case by case, but it depends on if it's a new lifter, a beginner lifter, an intermediate lifter, or an advanced lifter. For beginner lifters, I think it's important to have a lot more variation in your training and expose that lifter to a lot of different movements, a lot of different rep schemes, a lot of bodybuilding type stuff to build your muscles and build your endurance and work capacity. You have a lot more room for, a lot more leeway for different things that you can do, like adding in some Olympic weightlifting, adding in some sprinting, or different sports that you might enjoy. That's totally fine in the beginning stages. Intermediate, as you approach the advanced level, I think it's important to specialize a little bit more. In the intermediate place, you have to start pushing a little bit more the squat, bench, and the deadlift, maybe removing some of the exercises that are higher risk for you, whatever that might be. Some people don't know how to snatch, clean, and jerk. Maybe this is, and you're an intermediate powerlifter, maybe this is not a good time for you to start introducing those movements. And then finally, the advanced powerlifter, and I'll talk a little bit about myself and what I've learned through at least this last year in my journey. And that is that doing more is not always better, and specializing, when you're at this level, specializing more is probably what you need, especially as you approach the competitive season. So whatever competition you're doing, maybe 12 weeks leading into it, you have to specialize even more. But the most important takeaway is doing more is not necessarily better sometimes, and not only from a preference standpoint, but from a physiological standpoint. Bone takes about 4 to 5 days to remodel. So that was a huge thing that when I learned because I've been an athlete my whole life, so to me it's always been like, you have to do more. But learning that and understanding that what you're putting your body through is so stressful and requires you to sit back and recover, even at a physiological standpoint, where bones take 4 to 5 days to remodel. Tendons and muscles and ligaments, I don't know exactly what the time frame is, but 2 or 3 days more. So just making sure that you're allowing yourself enough time to recover from the stress that you're putting your body through, and not necessarily adding more stress whenever you're not making progress, but being able to take a step back, looking and just letting your body adapt and recover.
So Steffi, what are you most excited for the future? Lifting-wise, professional, career, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is continue growing professionally. So this is a big year of growth for me in that regard. I'm taking a lot more opportunities to speak at bigger conferences, seminars, webinars, that kind of stuff. I will hopefully finish a book that I'm writing, continue to grow hybrid performance method, the nutrition side of it and the training side of it, and compete as much as I can, as best as I can. Take your time. Be patient and prioritize your health above anything else when it comes to injuries and the way that your body's feeling. Never push past the point of pain. Don't be afraid to take a step back. Don't be afraid to take time off and listen to your body and how you're feeling, and keep your head on the future and the bigger picture.